Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Thank you for coming again. Number 6 weeks in a row. Ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. We're so glad that you're here. You gotta do us a favor and drop in the chat. How are you today? And let us know if you were at the last Politically Charged Monday. I'm Soraya. I work for Mass Liberation Arizona. We have some of our other team members today are Ria, who is running the beautiful music that you're listening to. Fatima's going to be reading your comments from the chat. And then the lovely Patricia, managing our Facebook page. We'll wait a few more minutes to see if anyone else is coming back in. Hey, Neil, I haven't seen you in a while.
Hi, Patricia.
Hey, Neil, good to see you.
How am I on here twice? Is that?
Do we have a wannabe Zoraida?
Oh, Lord, well, don't do that.
Everybody wants to be you.
Oh, you stop that. How are we doing in the chat? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Anisha. Hey, everybody.
Hey. How are we doing in the chat? Let's see. Been here for all of them, feeling good. Hello, I'm doing pretty good. Yes, we were here last week. Yay, welcome back, April. I'm so glad y'all are here. Thank you, Fatima.
I have a question for everybody that's on this call. Who here is planning on being at our call to action at City Council on Wednesday morning? Raise your hand. Ben, raise that hand up high. We want to hear your voice. Helen, thank you. Who else? Kurt, can you be there by any chance? Sarah? No comment. Okay, we'll keep the pressure on. We need everybody there. Oh, 2 participants. Anisha's going to be there. Sushi's going to be there. Thank you, friends. That hand makes me want to give you a high five. Thank you.
COOL. Patricia's going to talk about that a little bit later in the end part of our meeting, correct?
Correct. You know it always.
Right on. Right on. So yeah, we just want to make sure that you're engaging with us in the chat. We want to hear from all of you. Make sure that you're responding to panelists and attendees. I always do that. I end up sending somebody a message and having to rewrite it. So yeah, if you're going to drop something in the chat, make sure it's to everyone, including the panelists. And then, yeah, so if you're on Facebook, please go ahead and share the broadcast to your page. We really want to make sure that this gets to as many people as possible. So if you're able to, please do that. We want everybody who doesn't already know to know that the police department and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office are in collusion and they work overtime to mistreat and abuse our people. So thank you so much for that. We're asking tonight for participation from you again. So if you we drop a question, feel free to even unmute yourself or at least put your responses in the chat. I didn't mean at least, I mean and or drop your responses in the chat. And yeah. So today we are at our 6th Politically Charged Monday. This webinar today will likely be shorter than usual because we want to give you back some of your time, especially those who were with us on that crazy ride last week. I mean, we clocked a lot of hours disrupting space last week. So thank you so much if you were there. If not, thank you for your support all of the time. And yeah, we might give you some of your time back today. So we appreciate you showing up for us. And yeah, we've seen so much in this series already, but please drop in the chat what in the past 6 weeks has stood out to you the most. And let's see, Fatima, are you able to read the responses?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, they come pretty quick. What has stood out for you so far?
Helen says that our voice works.
Darn right. What else? What stood out for some of y'all? You can pop off your mute too. We'd like to hear your voice.
Ria says yes. Community really moves things. April says that they didn't take action until the exposure. And that's true.
Action in air quotes. I like that, April. All right. Anyone else? Something that stood out so far? Amy, how about you, since you're one of the folks that were had that stupid stuff reversed for you?
I was gonna say nothing it surprises me anymore. But I honestly, like, the fact that I would have been a fucking felon without you guys and Dave, like, is just crazy to me. Like, I'm just like a normal person that like works and goes to school, and it's just like wild. And I really didn't realize how much public pressure worked, honestly. Like, I thought it might influence like a little bit, but I honestly didn't think like people in power cared, but apparently they do. So
yeah. Have you gotten a lot of like on your personal socials, like any support otherwise, like besides, you know, our Mass Live Love?
yeah, I mean, when I was going through it, I had talked to like drop the charges and stuff. But I have a pretty decent Instagram following, so I was like trying to put it out there a bit, but I actually lost a lot of followers when I started talking about what happened to me. So that's been fun, but I think I gained back the right crowd, shall we say.
I was gonna say, yeah, those people weren't true to this anyway, so good riddance.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So then let me ask another question to all of you. What has been the highest point for you in the series thus far? In the 6 Mondays that we spent together, what's been the highest point? It's just a different way of asking the same question.
I just want to pop on and say one thing real quick. Because our dear Amy, who faced all those charges, she was like, I'm just a regular normal person. Like, for sure you are. And so is every other damn person that the MCAO and the PPD have caught up and done this to. And we need to remember that. And like Amy said, thank God that this got the air that it did. And thank God for the pressure, because there could be, 50,000 people behind bars right now. No one should be behind bars whatsoever for any reason. But we see how despicable MCAO is and how violent they are caging folks. It's not a solution, never, for any reason.
Thank you for that beautiful message in abolition, Patricia. All right, so let's see. The relief in finding out that charges are dropped every time. Yes. I took much pleasure every time their lies got exposed one by one. One of my favorite images is when Dave was interviewing Ed Zerker and he got all puffy and put his hands on his hips and was like, giving him all of this. Yeah, that was one of my faves. I took much pleasure every time their lies got exposed. And Ed Z's horrible interview. Yeah, that was hilarious. That was hilarious. Can you say shooketh? All right.
So, Ryder, one more. Lola in the Facebook comments says that her highlight was when the lying cops were exposed perjuring themselves. We saw it on video, folks.
That's right. That's right. Week after week. And if they don't know, now they know. That stupid sign in Adele's office that said, I do what's right, even if it's hard. Please. I guess we all have to lie to ourselves sometimes, huh? All right. So we appreciate Dave Biscuit. Well, thank you all for your comments and for your additions. I have one more question for you, and then I will get on with the show. So we know that Mass Liberation believes in abolition, which means that we want to abolish the system, practice, and institution of police. So during this time together in these 6 weeks, what has been your highest point of pride in abolition? Well, thank you, Fatima. And I keep thinking how I keep thinking how what's happening in Maricopa County is mirrored to here in Pima County. And it's not even on the news. Oh, well, we gotta get Maslib Arizona, Maslib Tucson on that, Neil. What has been a point of pride for any of you? Just a quick short answer. If that's too complicated of a question, I understand that too. Fatima, did I step on your reading of the chat?
No, you're doing great. Thank you.
I'm doing public comments and writing comments. As a DACA recipient, I didn't even think I could use my voice this way. Helen, you can use your voice in so many ways, and we're so happy that we're able to help you get there. Passion of everyone commenting, absolutely. Ria's sending hugs and hearts. Cool, very cool. Well, we appreciate Dave Biskobing for revealing for all the world now that PPD and MCAO are corrupt, violent liars. Who have always, but we've always known that and experienced them to be that way. But now the world knows, and there's no hiding anymore. We are approaching 1 year since the uprising of Black lives and police atrocities. This past weekend hit 1 year since Breonna Taylor was murdered. But does it look, what does it look and feel like to be in that action for you over this past year? Can you believe it's been a year? I'm gonna look in the chat again. I missed somebody. The fact that abolitionist values brought us to community, absolutely. Ria, you're so poetic. So what is this last year in action and activity for Black liberation? What does that feel like for you? Amy says she feels like she's finally doing something that matters and not just online. Absolutely. Girl, you almost gave your entire life to make that change. So we appreciate
Not that online activism isn't valid, because it is. But.
Right. Feet to the street matter too, though, right?
Absolutely.
That's right. Okay, so so we're still being killed by police, and a year later, we're still getting targeted and prosecuted, and the police are still lying, and we're still protesting. It's a long, vicious cycle, and Maslib will not stop until all the charges are dropped and everyone involved is fired and held accountable. We know that they will go to any lengths to silence anyone who speaks out against them. We saw their pathetic and absurd gang charges put on blast. We saw the evidence of PPD targeting Bruce and Jamar in an attempt to silence them and stop their work for Black liberation. And thank God that we were all here to support them, each other, everyone else that was had these crappy charges dumped on them. Thank God we were all here in support and community to help reverse that. So Alistair Adele was finally forced again to drop the charges for 10-7. And she said that they had no reason that they couldn't legally or ethically continue. It's a really big deal. We know that. We know that more cases have been dropped, but there's still some people whose lives are still in the balance. And we got to get them to drop them. Plus, there's still the city charges that need to be dropped too. So pressure. We're not going to stop until it all happens. Please understand that they only dropped these charges because they were put on blast by Dave and because of the community pressure that we're putting on them, separate from that. So again, we could not do this if it wasn't for you, but we have to keep applying pressure because we have to make sure that everyone is safe from the police's lies and get this atrocity overturned. We are able to move the dial towards justice. I hope you all know again that it's because of you. We need to keep it up. We have to keep going. The police department and MCA are completely out of control. We have the right to gather in oppositions of murdered Black folks by the hands of police without being arrested. We have the right to care about Black lives without being criminalized, and it all has to stop now. That's why we're organizing and we're pushing our 9 demands via our city's citizens petition. So drop in the chat now how the conversation's going with your family and friends. Are you still having those convos with your peeps? Yep. Cool. Well, I think Patricia, who dropped that in there? Ria, Fatima, someone dropped in the chat the link to all of these stories for Drop the Charge or for Politically Charged Monday, so you can feel free to share them far and wide because again, the fight's not over, right? So keep pushing and applying pressure. The more people you can reach, the more people will know, the more attention and eyes will be on this, and the more we can get them to release the rest of the folks that have not been, have their charges dropped. So thank you again for being here. We're gonna get into our next, our first video clip that we're gonna show today. Ria, you think you're ready?
Our politically charged investigation exposed police and prosecutors abusing their power, even lying in protest cases.
But a new bill at the state capitol aims to give them even more power to punish protesters. A group of religious and community organizers joining together today to denounce House Bill 2309. It would allow officials to take some misdemeanor crimes like obstructing a road and make them felonies if police declare a, quote, violent or disorderly assembly.
The problem, community leaders say, is that police and prosecutors can't be trusted.
HB 2309 is also a direct assault on Black and brown Arizonans who have long demanded they be allowed to simply live their lives free from police violence and prosecutor overreach.
And that brings us to a new and unique chapter in our politically charged investigation. You're about to hear from an original member of the Chicago 7, a group of community activists politically prosecuted for protesting way back in 1968.
Their story made national news and was just highlighted in a Netflix movie that won a Golden Globe Award. So why is this relevant now? It is often said history repeats itself, and some say that is what's happening in Phoenix. ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing finding disturbing similarities to the Chicago 7 case. We do want to note our investigation has had a major impact, and this interview was conducted before many of those developments.
They're in for a horrible time.
Lee Weiner won't sugarcoat what this group of protesters faces after being charged as a criminal street gang.
Are saying that, look, we're going to punish people. And so you damn well stay off of our streets. They wanted to demonstrate that they control the streets, they control your life.
Weiner lived the experience 52 years ago during a famous high-profile case, again made famous when Netflix released the 2020 film, The Trial of the Chicago 7. At the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, there were protests and riots. Police violently clashed with people.
Are they about to conquer Spain?
Months later, President Richard Nixon was elected.
Do you have contempt for your government?
His Department of Justice, under a law and order campaign, indiscriminately charged 7 activists, claiming they worked together to spark riots. The conspiracy to riot case was politically charged
For a confrontation with the police
and called a political prosecution. In the Netflix movie released last year under the backdrop of national police protests and President Trump's similar rally cries of law and order.
months ago in
You can see the character who plays Lee Weiner here. Lee says the movie, while not 100% factually accurate, damn close to accurately reflecting the tone, feel, and nature of what happened.
This is it. It's time.
We're not rushing the police.
The movie did the work. It told and showed that people can and should resist injustice. Back in those days, the police believed it was they controlled, it was their streets.
You know, it's amazing that you said that, because I'm going to read you the last statement I got from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, right? Here's how they close it. MCAO, the County Attorney's Office, is committed to protecting the safety of everyone in this community, law enforcement and demonstrators alike. While we fully support the rights of everyone to exercise their First Amendment rights, we will not allow violence to take over our streets. Our streets.
Yeah. Love that possessive pronoun.
Compared to what happened in 1968 or throughout America last year, Lee laughs at the gang charges based on video and interviews we sent him.
These folks in Arizona did not fight back. Where on the streets in Chicago, we fought back. I was stunned, actually, by the lack of resistance.
Our investigation discovered the group charged as a criminal street gang because of 3 things. 1, prosecutors claim they dressed the same by wearing mostly black. 2, most carried umbrellas. And 3, they chanted the phrase, "All cops are bastards." Community and legal groups are furious about the charges. They say it's clearly designed to silence dissent.
You know, there's some things that I'm seeing now that you guys dealt with then that I think is just interesting. I kind of want to go through some of the interesting similarities. You know, I read in your book, and back then you talked about how you and others, I mean, you were essentially surveilled, and people took, you know, police and law enforcement took your picture. They gathered intelligence on your stuff. I mean, we're seeing that now. So there was one part of your book that I thought was really interesting. And that is you guys get booked into jail. they shave your heads, and then the sheriff shows your hair to political donors as like a trophy.
Yep.
Well, we're seeing now that some of the main officers for Phoenix PD who respond and handle these protest responses, they created a little trophy themselves, a little challenge coin when they shot a guy in the nuts. And I just think that it's just really interesting, kind of like, oh no, you know, we're neutral, we're just trying to keep control, but yet then they're celebrating what they've done. They got your hair. They got this guy's dignity, right? I mean,
it's tribal. It is primitive and tribal.
In a previous report, we revealed after this man was shot by Phoenix police in the groin during a protest in 2017, officers in the Tactical Response Unit celebrated by making a challenge coin to share and sell.
Trophies probably is the right word. Is something that it's part of their culture.
Were you hoping for a confrontation with the police?
Most of the Chicago 7 were convicted at trial. Those convictions overturned on appeal. Historically, few consider what happened in 1968 as anything but a political trial, with a political prosecution in a politically charged environment.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
And here's Lee's take when we read him another statement from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, denying that's the case here and now with the gang charges.
this office does not condone or support political prosecution of any kind.
Yeah. And the trial in '68 wasn't a political trial either. They also said the umbrellas were a dangerous weapon. I mean, it's a farce. It would be a farce if it wasn't so dangerous and troublemaking and hurtful to the people thereafter.
I'm investigator Dave Biscobet, ABC 15, Arizona.
Because of our politically charged investigation, the gang charges against the group were dropped, and more than a dozen police and prosecutors are currently under internal and outside investigations. You can watch all of Dave's past reporting right now at abc15.com/protest.
Okay, y'all. So there were so many red flags for us when we viewed this. So let me just say that folks with privilege that are watching this think that if somebody chooses to protest, they take the chance of getting arrested. It's just one of those things, right? So to them, it's just really history repeating itself. Like 1968 Chicago to 2021 Phoenix. It's just you go out there and you do that, then that's the risk that you take. But the fact that they are even able to compare what the small group in Phoenix that they had on the show today and the Chicago 17 movement blows my mind. But let's be clear, this is not history repeating ourselves. This is our history that we have been living every single day. It's happening right now in front of us, and every day for 400 years, it's been our history as Black people. Nothing is new. The police are there to cage us. The police are there to catch us and cage us. And so this is not history repeating ourselves every single day of our lives. This is our life. This is our history, right? So the only thing that's really changed is the police have better weapons now. Lee of the Chicago 7 made a comment about protesters here in Phoenix that were not resisting at all, but in Chicago, they were there to fight. So let's just put a pause on that and think about how out of touch that comment was that he made. I mean, PPD was wearing tactical gear, yielding military grade weapons, screaming and hollering at folks, pushing back the line, grabbing on folks. We saw that they shot someone with a rubber bullet. We heard that one of the protesters had their arm broke. I mean, people were getting hurt. I mean, seriously, how do you resist when the police are poised and trained and ready to kill? Lee said that we should fight or resist injustice, but there's only so much we can do when the police are there in full war gear to kill us. So yeah, resisting would have ended up with people being dead on the street that day. We know not to resist because we know that Phoenix police will shoot, and they'll shoot first. They won't allow that. So instead they made up lies and made up stuff about how protesters were conducting themselves and arrested people, whoever they wanted to, when they wanted to. We all know that PPD reacts doing the most at a simple traffic stop. So imagine if there would have been actual resistance and fighting back like they did in Chicago. They look like soldiers at war. So who is really the threat? The cops or the people that were there with their umbrellas and their black t-shirts? The real gang is the police department. They're the ones with the gangs. They're the ones with the violence. But anyway, you see the differences in perspective of some white folks when they don't have the same experiences, perspectives, and propensity for being targeted by police as Black folks do. So Lee actually said that he was surprised at the lack of resistance. And it's really out of touch comment for today, because like I said, if they would have fought back like they did in Chicago in 1968, people would have died. So please just keep that in mind when we thought about that when we were watching the video and thought that it was an important point to share. So the police has also justified their actions the way they always do. Really, the only thing that's changed, not to dismiss at all what happened in 1968, but today the police have AR-15s or whatever the heck those big old automatic machine guns are called, and they don't have just clubs and shields. And PPD, like I said, they shoot first. They threaten to shoot, and they do shoot people at every opportunity. So today in Phoenix, that resistance would have caused folks to die, and we would have been, I don't want to make that statement I was just going to make because it was really morbid. So I'm going to take that back from my brain and the universe. It would have been a horrible massacre. And they, the police, were ready for just that. They were looking for somebody to make a problem, and they were going to arrest them and then trump up some ridiculous charges to make it even worse. So more and more police are equipped to kill. They have more time to practice and their violence and their terror. And they now don't care. And they feel above retribution, camera or no camera. They just do what they want. So the reason why this huge movement in Chicago is, and the comparably small protest here in Phoenix can even be paralleled, is because police violence, police terror, and police lies are on display, and because PPD is so out of control, and now they're getting national scrutiny, so there's no place to hide. Sadly, Chicago happened 15 years ago. That protest in Chicago happened 50 years ago, and we're still fighting the same dirty cops and all of their dirty little ways. So the only problem now is that they have bigger weapons. And it's sad to me that there's so much still to compare. Like, for example, the police in the case in Chicago said that those streets were their streets in 1968. In 2021, MCA used the same exact possessive pronoun, saying that stuff does not belong we will not allow it in our streets. And David even said our streets. So the problem is the mindset's the same, and the problem is even bigger. The officers and the prosecutors in the case of Chicago took the people's hair, which how creepy and like horse in the head from Godfather is that? Like, how disgusting is that anyway? But anyway, they use it as a trophy then. And now the PPD here in Phoenix have a challenge coin. So they're celebrating their violence with trophies that demean community, and they fortify the them versus us mentality. So you guys, the system is not broken. The system is truly designed to be this way. I had to laugh, just like Lee, when MCAO said that they could not condone political prosecutions. Like, seriously? Can we all kind of laugh together? Because that seriously had to be a joke. So what now, Alistair Adele is like Shaggy talking about it wasn't me? Get the heck out of here. The worst thing is that she doesn't just condone it, she perpetuates it and she creates it. And that office does too. So I think it's all really gross. And Ria, there was one part in there about a House bill that I'm not really up on game about. So would you mind hopping on and telling us about I think he said 2309?
Yep. Yeah, so yeah, it's really important to know that they showcased that press conference about HB 2309, which we call the Protester Punishment Bill. And this bill, like, if you've been following our socials, you know that we've been posting about it. We've been talking about like a package of bills that are like really retaliatory bills that have been, pretty much, they're basically backlash against the movement last year. And they look to, again, criminalize protesters and also roll back any police accountability measures that might exist in the world. So HB 2309 is going to be heard at the Arizona State Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday at 9 a.m. And so, we really are like asking folks to, continue sending out letters against their folks, against the bill to their Arizona state senators, letting them know that we won't stand for bills like this, which look to make protesting even harder for Black and brown folks in our communities. And you can also, there'll also be another action about like calling up the Judiciary Committee's chairperson. I forgot what so people are like, we're definitely like mobilizing against that. It's a huge problem that they would seek to create like even more felonies for what is already considered illegal, right, in Arizona, which is a so-called riot. And it's really just leaving up it's leaving once again the law up to people we know we can't trust, right? So it's the police have the discretion to label what is a what is a disorderly assembly and who is participating in it. So we can see that, like, on the county level, the city level, the state level, these attacks continue to happen. And I think Fatima put in the link for the action if you haven't already done it.
Thank you, Ria. I love our team. There's somebody on their team that knows something about everything we need to know about. So yay. So yeah, thanks, Ria. The pressure is working. It's working, and our collective resistance is working. So we have another video to show that's proof. And I'm not even going to really preface it. I want you to be surprised by the content. So hang on for a second, and Ria, if you're ready.
Charges dropped as our politically charged investigation continues to have an unprecedented impact. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office just dismissing criminal charges against a dozen more protesters, including the case against Bruce Franks Jr., a former Missouri state lawmaker and nationally known activist. They were arrested on August 9th and have faced the threat of years in prison until just hours ago. ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing broke the news, and it comes after he exposed the case was rife with problems. Here's Dave now with more on this major development.
This is now the second major protest case that's been dismissed. The first was the, quote, protester gang case we've covered so extensively. But the case against Bruce Franks Jr. and the others was filled with problems too. And maybe the most troubling, it was the clearly false testimony that police and prosecutors gave to the grand jury. For 7 months, 12 of these protesters faced a long list of felony charges. Those charges are no more, at least for now. In this motion to dismiss, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office writing, after reviewing the totality of the evidence in these cases, including numerous videos and other evidence, we believe it is in the interests of justice to dismiss the current charges. The video evidence was damning, not for the protesters, but for police and prosecutors who gave clearly false testimony to the grand jury. Here's one example. They testified that Bruce Franks Jr. and others rushed the police line in a football lineman-style bull rush. Take a look. That didn't happen, no matter the camera or the angle. As for Franks, he's a prominent activist. He's called the St. Louis Superman, the title of a documentary nominated for an Oscar, profiling his rise from battle rapper to street protester to state lawmaker in Missouri.
Of course, I'm extremely happy that our charges are being dropped from August 9th.
Bruce just sent us this short video statement of his immediate reaction to the charges being dropped.
But at the end of the day, we still have more people facing charges, and we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to holding those accountable who were responsible for these political prosecutions in the first place.
In the dismissal, prosecutors also wrote, "We intend to refile charges against some of these defendants, but most of those charges will be different than the current charges. Where felony offenses are appropriate, we intend to initiate those cases by preliminary hearing." Now, bringing charges again will be difficult because many of the officers and prosecutors involved in the protest cases are now under various investigations, some for their conduct, others for owning, sharing, and selling a challenge coin that celebrated shooting a protester in the groin. That coin's language has ties to hate speech.
And therefore,
after ABC 15 broke the news, County Attorney Alistair Adele released a pre-recorded statement. It's almost entirely the same as the language used in the motion to dismiss, but Adele did add this.
This office will continue to be dedicated to a thorough review of evidence, responsibly pursuing fairness, and doing what is right under the law.
Now, the county attorney has declined our repeated interview requests to talk about these cases and question the type of pre-recorded statement you just saw. Now, before we end this report, here's a scorecard of what's happened in politically charged so far. 2 protest cases have been dismissed, impacting more than 24 defendants. Both Phoenix Police and MCAO have launched separate outside investigations. 14 police officers have been reassigned. 1 county prosecutor is on leave, and another prosecutor has been removed from protest cases. Now, we're still investigating. Specifically, what did officials like the county attorney and the Phoenix police chief know about these cases, and when? I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15, Arizona.
Thank you, Ria. As we just saw, Bruce's charges were dismissed, and that's amazing news. We're so happy for Bruce and everyone. But before we go into it, we just want to check in. How are you all doing?
anybody have any thoughts they want to share about this last video? About Alistair, Adele's comments, or anything else you saw? Go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know what you're thinking. Helen says, honestly scared of how powerful Facebook is.
It's just like graphically terrible.
Well, it's not just Helen, how powerful PD is, it's how they are literally in a sandbox with MCAO, and that duo is like death for brown and black people. And anyone standing in solidarity with Black liberation too, so. Yeah, I can't believe they were planning on recharging either.
Up in the tree.
Anisha says, I hate seeing, hearing Alistair. And yes, scared about that plan to charge again.
Yeah, they told us that when we filed our lawsuit, that they might come after us again. Just for filing a lawsuit.
What did your attorney say? Bring it?
She said, fuck them or something. Something like that.
Yeah, if you have no stamina when you block, you just get pushed back.
She never said dismissing with prejudice. I hope that Dave is right and that it will be tougher now. It's so messed up. You're right. It is so messed up, Fatima.
Your stamina goes up still at least while you block, so that's good. Block, block, block. Oh,
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Patricia, you want to talk about our little surprise? Surprise.
Sure, thank you. Vanessa says it highlights how critical it is that MCAO/police are held accountable, and she's grateful that the charges are dropped, for sure.
Yeah.
April said she'll be here as long as it takes for MCAO to know our calls to action. That's right. We need to keep coming together to make sure that all of these charges are dropped, every last one, and we will do it. So I want to go back to the first video just for a second, when Lee Weiner said, I'm so surprised by their lack of resistance. I couldn't believe it. And I don't know how accurate the Chicago 7 movie was on Netflix. However, when Lee and all of his crew walked down the street and saw the police and they all cocked their weapons, they knew that was a signal. Oh, wow, they mean business. We need to get out of here. And at that point, they all turned around, right? Now, our signal, we've been trained. We know, like Zoraida said, the police shoot first. That's why we were in the streets in the first place. It was Black and brown folks marching in the streets. It was allies in support of the movement for Black lives. And so we knew that the state, the carceral system, views Black folks and any ally as an enemy of their supreme power that they're trying to maintain control over. So it's important to note that that's why there is absolutely no possibility that those folks that were there that night could have resisted. They knew they would have been killed. And it's only through a white person's perspective that they would think, oh, wow, well, we fought when the police came to us in the park with billy clubs, which is a terrible thing and takes courage, but we are fighting injustice. We just know that if we dare try to fight that injustice in the street against a cop in $500,000 of militarized weaponry and uniform, the fight is going to end right there. And we need everyone to be safe and alive to keep going. So our one huge tool we have right now is community, communication, and narrative shift. And so one thing that we have to do is to get more folks, a broader audience, to see the truth of what is actually happening, to see what is going on constantly, every single day behind closed doors. The police round people up, the MCAO charges them, and then they're imprisoned for decades and who knows how long. So using narrative shift, MassLib AZ is working on a story to tell what has gone on this past year. We're going to bring out a documentary that will expose how the system is not broken. It's not a couple bad actors. We don't need to just disband the TRU, the Tactical Response Unit, and fire Adele, April, and Nick. We need to dismantle the entire system, because truly from its inception, it was designed only for one purpose. It has nothing to do with law, with justice, with crime. It has only to do with keeping the folks in power that have power. And we all know it's very clear that was originally white, wealthy, straight, land-owning men. And guess who it is today? It's the same thing. So we have to get that narrative out there to the masses so that folks like Lee Weiner, when he sees these protesters lay down in the street and follow demands, it's not because they're not as radical as he was in the 60s. It's because they know they would have been shot and killed. And that
Also,
gives me goosebumps.
Isn't that interesting about like the rose-colored glasses that people use to like look back on protests? Like I remember after we got arrested watching Across the Universe, which was like about the Vietnam War protests in the 60s, and like how much like people romanticize that now. And it's like people were out in the streets getting beaten, and and now we look back like, oh, like it's some like cool artsy thing, and and then those same people like criticize us for being out in the street today. So it's really easy to look back in the past and like be like, oh well, we did this, but then you criticize the same people who are doing it, who are doing it now.
It's especially easy when you have an Oscar or whatever award on your mantle and royalties from your book coming in your bank account too, from 50 years ago. No offense to him at all. No offense. So Fatima, whenever you're ready, the mic is yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what really stuck out to me was that they intend to recharge people with like totally new charges. That's really messed up. But if we can take a step back and see what the MCAO said in their motion to dismiss the protest charges, someone also brought it up that they said that after reviewing the totality of the evidence in these cases, including numerous videos and other evidence, we believe it is in the interests of justice to dismiss the current charges. In the interest of justice, they had to dismiss the charges. No, it was the pressure of the community, and that community pressure works. Also want to point out that the evidence to dismiss the charges included numerous videos and how important it is to document and film. If you remember the photographer and nurse from Prescott, he was targeted and he was documenting their behavior, and they didn't like that. And last time we talked about body cam footage. So a lot of the documentary series had a lot of body cam footage, but we know, and we discussed last week, that you can't reform their behavior. They still do what they want to do while their body cameras are on, and they're not held accountable. And a lot of the time, body cameras are pitched as making police more accountable, and that it increases the idea that policing, when done right, makes us safe, but they don't. And so I wanted to ask you all, knowing who Bruce Franks Jr. is, why do you think Bruce was charged? Why was anyone charged? If anyone wanted to unmute.
Because he's more high profile, I think. And a leader.
Yeah, exactly. And Vanessa had their hand up.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because he's a leader, and just looking at, if they can intimidate people and try to make people afraid, then probably the hope is for them to discourage other folks. Same with, the laws that are going through. It's just it's all about, and that's the game is intimidation and violence, which is why abolition is the way, can't reform that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Vanessa. And Helen?
I think, like people just know, right? If you bring down the leaders that are organizing, it brings everything down. So they always try to go, we've seen it before with Martin Luther King Jr., anybody else that has been like the center of community organizing, they know that that's the main vein to cut. So we're not here for it.
Thank you, Helen. Ria says in the chat, because he's a Black organizer. And Sushil says, Bruce was targeted for months. They wanted to keep dominating us and keep us in fear. Exactly. They also use their body cams as surveillance too, to surveil us. And you're all right. Bruce is a leader, a Black liberation leader. Bruce is a nationally known Black Lives Matter activist and a former Missouri state representative who's now working with Mass Liberation. Bruce was, in fact, politically persecuted. And so what is political prosecution? Our city officials love to criticize the fascist tendencies of the Trump administration while condoning the authoritarian tactics used by the police in their very own city. And we see that here in Phoenix. Experts agree that criminal charges may cross the line into political prosecutions when police identify and target political opponents, and they criminally charge them for activities involving protected speech. Most of the time, these charges are trumped up and so-called investigations are rushed, with the police refusing to produce evidence and or going to great lengths to push out lies to the public. This is exactly what we've seen here in Phoenix again. Phoenix PD has surveilled and targeted high-profile activists like Bruce and Jamar for years and levied fabricated criminal charges against them in an effort to chill free speech and intimidate critics of their department. And especially since the summer uprisings, Phoenix PD has been targeting activists to silence them, like you've all said, and to get them scared to get involved in the movement. And as a result of these political prosecutions and false charges, people have been traumatized, people have been jailed, people have been exposed to COVID-19, they've been transferred to ICE, they lost their jobs, they've been deported and had their property taken. And they've also been forced to stop protesting, which is the point of political prosecution. And so we have proof that anyone who speaks out against them will be targeted as well. And so we saw in the video, Alistair Dell, she said, this office, MCAO, will continue to be dedicated to a thorough review of evidence, responsibly pursuing fairness and doing what is right under the law. And I'd like to hand the mic over to Patricia to talk about her favorite, Alistair Dell. What do you think?
Okay, so for the sake of time, I will be brief. However, it is important that we all go out and tell at least 5 people, post it on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, everywhere you are, that Alistair Dell and every prosecutor in the MCAO are terrible, evil liars. They do not carry out justice. The only reason why she made that comment is, again, like we pointed out every time, because they were caught, okay? This is not just like a miscarriage of justice. This is so on purpose. We ran a campaign to drop Adele. People are aware now how violent that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office is. And because of that, and we also, I think at this point, we're throwing around the term political prosecution like it's, oh, today is Monday. But 6 months ago, people hadn't even heard of that, okay? We had to do a lot of work to get that term out in relation to these cases, because people weren't sure that we were right about that. They weren't sure that it was true. This is absolutely political. This is MCAO, PPD, city staff trying to maintain their power over the people. The people are saying, no, absolutely not. We will have justice. A political battle ensues. So I think it's important to continue those conversations and to not overlook the fact and not let it be a small thing that Alistair is doing interviews now telling these lies. And I can confidently say she's lying because we saw in the interview 5 or 6 politically charged Mondays snippets. I'm using the word snippet because Alistair used that in her video when she said, I had a snippet of what was going on, when she's trying to deflect responsibility and put it on her prosecutors, who we will see some of them fired, right? She'll, probably April's out the door. She's already on administrative leave, but that's just a scapegoat because Alistair Adele said, I'm not my predecessors. I'm the first female elect. And so she's calling that is a dog whistle to the white voters, to carceral feminists, to everyone that thinks, oh, wow, it's a big deal. It's our first elected woman in office. Yay, let's celebrate that. Meanwhile, she's behind closed doors trying to cage people for their dissent, for their demands of justice. And we have to be aware of that. And we have to push the narrative and make sure everyone we know knows that. I could go on and on about it, but the fact is she's a liar. You need to tell everyone you know that. And we're not asking, right? So these people have broken the law. We're not asking that we prosecute, charge, and cage them. We're asking for real justice because putting a couple dirty cops in jail isn't going to help us. It's not going to change the system. That's why we keep saying it has to be abolition. It has to be the system dismantled and then something new created in its place. And we're just going to keep saying that until everyone in the county knows that and is working with us to dismantle MCAO and PPD. So I'm going to mute and pass the mic back because I know we got to move forward.
Thank you, Patricia. So this story and what these people have been doing is an iteration of misconduct, malpractice, and corruption this office has been known for doing forever. And so, as we've been saying again and again, the system is designed this way. And this office holds a lot of power. And we need to ask ourselves, as abolitionist and geographer Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, we need to ask ourselves, why do these things happen where they do? Why do these things happen where they do? The Maricopa County Attorney's Office is the 3rd largest prosecuting office in the United States. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office is the largest county in the state. Arizona, as a state, has the 5th highest incarceration rate in the nation. Phoenix PD is one of the deadliest police forces in the nation. And South Phoenix is home to 2 zip codes that constitute or that are home to $2 million blocks. And $1 million block is, what this means is that the state spends in excess of $1 million per year or more to incarcerate the residents of a single city block. And so this office is very dangerous. We have cops targeting people. We have prosecutors officially signing off, putting people in cages, and they are working together to put Black and brown people locked up. And so this is why mass liberation has been focused on this office and mass incarceration for so long. And the deeper issue is that, what do we do after this? When we get these nonsense charges dropped and a little accountability, not even, but then what? They put one lead prosecutor on admin leave, which is temporary, and they still get paid. Another has been assigned off of protest cases, and 14 officers have been reassigned. So they get to spread their evil elsewhere. And what about the cases that have slipped through the cracks? The media picked up this one. It doesn't mean that this is the only time. And we all know that there are over 400 years of worth of cases that they congratulate themselves on for getting away with. We also want to make sure that we know that it is easy for all of us to get behind something that is clearly more visible, like these false charges, as a campaign, which is why so many people are rallying behind it. There is an investigation around it, but what about all of the charges? Just as police kill us in the streets, as Lola says, with physical violence, prosecutors kill us in the courts with their racist policies and long sentences. And we should ask ourselves, how about the people who actually have done harm? This is the challenging part we have to work through as a community. What does it mean to choose healing and community based on alternatives to incarceration? We need to keep building power, and we need to remember that this is not a moment and this is a movement. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Patricia on how we are moving power.
Thank you so much, Fatima. So we know that this really is a fight for Black liberation. And when Black folks are free, we're all free. That's why we're doing this work at MassLib AZ. And I know I'm preaching to the choir for all of you that are sitting on this call with us and who are sitting on Facebook watching, but that's why we want you to share with your friends so that we can get the message out. So what we need to do this week is show up on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. We will drop the link in the chat. If you can't be there, if you don't have the extreme privilege to take time off work and show up at this long, boring, violent, toxic space with City Council, then you can put a comment in the chat and ask 5 friends to do the same. We are going to show up there to make sure that our citizens' petitions will be heard and that council will get them onto the formal council meeting. The petitions are heard at the Land Use and Livability Subcommittee, and that's this Wednesday at 10 a.m. Then we're going to ask you to write a comment or show up and speak if you can at 2:30 p.m. on the same day, because that's where Jeff Barton, the Assistant City Manager under Ed Zuricher, City Manager's guidance, is going to tell City Council that they will pay $250,000 to a group of ex-cops to investigate the Tactical Response Unit. And it's absolutely absurd. I mean, it's maddening and unacceptable that this is the response they're giving. So we're asking for folks to oppose that. And then we have HB 2309. We're asking folks to show up on Thursday morning to help us argue that, because something important to remember is these bills, everything that's happening, these arrests, these political prosecutions, it's in retaliation against Black activists, against Black leadership, okay? It's not a surprise as to why they're doing this. And so we need the whole community to come out in support. So the links are in the chat for both Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. And then Thursday evening, if you still want to have more fun with MassLib fam because you love us and you can't get enough, we are doing another text bank to continue pushing our petition of demands. We're almost at 5,000 and our ultimate goal is 20,000, and we need your help to help us get to that 20,000 mark. And that's shifting the narrative, that's turning the tide. The more and more folks are on board, the better it will be. We appreciate you all so much, and I'm going to pass the mic back to Zoraida.
My mic was off. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Fatima, so much for all of that beautiful information. And I really, again, can't thank everyone on our webinar now and everyone on Facebook so much for all of your support, for all of your, time that seems endless, all of our seemingly endless asks, and you always show up, and you show up in power and in love, and we appreciate you so very much. Hopefully we'll see some of you the rest of the week from the call to action that Patricia just gave us, and some of these meetings and events that we'll be attending and disrupting. So please enjoy the rest of your evening. I promised you I was going to give you, I said I would give you time, and now I'm stealing a minute or two from your night. So we're going to pop on some music. If you want to stay and hang out and decompress from some of the nonsense that we saw, please feel free to. If not, we will see you next week, or definitely at one of those events coming up. So again, sending you big fat MassLib love, and hope you have a good night, and thanks again for being here.
That's why I love the moon. Every night it's there for you. it's guns.